Welcome back, Wayfarer. I'm so glad you could join us tonight. It's a privilege to accompany you on our journey, and I hope you find a deep and restful sleep when we reach our destination. You have found your way to another quiet sanctuary, and you are very welcome here. Before we step out into the evening, take a moment to settle. Let the weight of your body sink into the mattress. Feel the support of the bed beneath you, a solid foundation holding you steady. Take a deep, slow breath in, filling your lungs with the coolness of the night. And as you exhale, let the tension in your jaw, your neck, and your hands dissipate and flow from your body. You are safe. You are grounded. You are home. Tonight, our journey takes us away from the salt spray of the coast and upward toward the ancient limestone spine of England, the High Wold. We are walking a path that feels as old as the earth itself, a landscape of rolling emerald swells and silver-grey stone walls that march toward the horizon. The sky above is a vast, heavy canvas of slate and charcoal, hanging low with the promise of a soft winter rain. Out here, the air is clean and bracing. It carries the scent of damp earth, the mineral tang of cold stone, and the distant, lonely song of the wind as it combs through the high grasses. The air in the valley is thick this morning. As you step out from the heavy oak doors of the fuller's mill, the transition is immediate. The rhythmic, subterranean thrum of the gears is replaced by the wide, chaotic music of the river and the first gentle stirrings of a Cotswold rain. Take a moment to adjust your pack. Feel the weight of it settling against your shoulders. Sturdy, familiar, and balanced. Reach back and pull the hood of your new cloak over your head. This is the felted wool you watched the hammers pummel into existence. It is heavy and dense, smelling faintly of the lanolin and the clean mineral earth used to scour it. As the first droplets of rain fall from the grey sky, You hear them land on the fabric. And not a splash, but a soft, muffled pat. You watch as the water beads into perfect silver spheres, rolling harmlessly off the tight fibers. You are a dry sanctuary inside a moving wall of wool. Your journey today takes you north and east, leaving the sheltered dampness of the riverbed for the exposed heights of the Wolds. The path beneath your boots is the Old Salt Way, an ancient trackway that has seen the passage of pack horses and pilgrims for 1,000 years. Here, the ground is made of oolitic limestone, a warm honey-coloured stone that breaks into flat, shimmery flakes. Under the rain, the path turns a deeper amber, the stones slick and gleaming like jewels set in the dark mud. As you begin the steady climb out of the valley, the sounds of the mill begin to fade. The roar of the weir becomes a hiss, then a whisper, and finally it is swallowed entirely by the wind in the hedgerows. To your left and right, the landscape is defined by dry stone walls. These are the skeleton of the Cotswolds. You look closely at them as you pass. They are built without a single drop of mortar. The stones are held together by nothing more than gravity and the skill of the waller who knitted them together. In the crevices of the limestone, tiny ferns and silver-green lichens drink in the mist. The climb is long, but your pace is measured. There is no hurry on the High Wold. You breathe in the scent of the morning, the sharp ozone tang of the rain, the bittersweet aroma of decaying leaves, and the cold, clean smell of wet stone. With every step upward, the air grows thinner and cooler. The valley floor is disappearing into a sea of white mist behind you, leaving you alone on the rising spine of the hills. You are heading towards Stow-on-the-Wold, the highest town in these parts. In the medieval tongue, they call it Stow of the Holy Edward. It is a place where the wind is said to have a voice of its own. But for now, there is only the rhythmic crunch, squelch of your boots on the limestone track, and the steady, hypnotic patter of rain on your hood. You are moving through a landscape that remembers every footstep ever taken upon it. You are part of the walk. You are part of the hill. The path continues its upward pull, a steady, relentless incline that asks for a slower, more deliberate gait. As you climb, the geography of the valley floor begins to flatten out behind you, becoming a tapestry of blurred greens and greys, lost in the soft falling rain. Your world has shrunk to the width of the old salt way, in the immediate presence of the limestone walls that flank it like ancient, silent sentries. In this part of the Cotswolds, the stone is everything. These walls are not just boundaries. They are the bones of the earth brought to the surface. You notice the courses of the stone, the way the waller has selected thin, flat shards for the base, and through stones that span the entire width of the wall to give it strength. There is no cement here, no mortar to hide the mistakes. Each stone relies on its neighbour, a puzzle of gravity and friction that has stood for 200 years. You reach out a gloved hand and touch the top coping stones. They are set on edge, like a row of jagged teeth to shed the rain. The limestone feels rough, porous and cold. Even in the damp you can see the history of the sea in the stone. Tiny fossilized shells and crinoids from an ocean that covered this hill millions of years before a human foot ever pressed into the mud. The rain has turned the pale cream stone into a deep, dark ochre, and the water collects in the hollows of the lichen, dripping steadily onto the grass below with a rhythmic, percussive drip. The smell here is shifting. The damp rot of the river valley is gone, replaced by the clean, alkaline scent of wet lime and the sharp, fresh aroma of sheep's fescue and wild thyme crushed beneath your boots. Even in the rain, the wold is fragrant. You pass a gap in the wall, a sheep styles, and catch the heavy, greasy scent of a flock huddling on the leeward side of the hill. You cannot see them through the mist, but you hear the occasional clack of a hoof against stone, and the heavy, wet sigh of an animal settling into the earth. The wind is beginning to find you now. Down in the mill yard, the air was stagnant and heavy, but up here, it moves with a restless energy. It isn't a gale, but a persistent, cool, fingers on the cheek kind of wind that carries the taste of the distant sea. It hums through the gaps in the dry stone wall, creating a low-frequency whistle, the hollow pipe sound of the hills. You adjust your stride, feeling the muscles in your calves working against the slope. Each breath you take is colder than the last, filling your lungs with the pure, unwashed air of the high country. There is a deep satisfaction in the effort. The crunch slide of your boots on the wet limestone brash becomes a metronome for your thoughts. You aren't just walking to Stowe. You are becoming a part of the incline, a rhythmic element of the landscape itself. As the ascent levels off, the landscape undergoes a sudden dramatic change in texture. The open, wind-swept path of the Salt Way is swallowed by the looming shadows of the beech woods. Step by step, you move from the grey, expansive light of the hillside into a cathedral of muted greens and deep coppers. The first thing you notice is the change in the rain. Outside on the open wold, it was a fine, misty veil that settled on your shoulders. Here, the massive canopy of the beech trees, some centuries old, acts as a vast organic umbrella. You hear the rain before you feel it. It is a loud, chaotic clatter-tap as thousands of heavy droplets strike the broad, waxy leaves 50 feet above your head. It sounds like the applause of a distant crowd, muffled and rhythmic. Only a few stray drops manage to find their way through the ceiling of branches, falling with a heavy, cold plink onto your wool hood or the soft earth at your feet. The ground beneath your boots has transformed. The crunch of limestone brash has been replaced by the silent, springy give of a beech mast. A carpet of fallen leaves and the husks of beech nuts that has accumulated over decades. It is thick, damp, and reddish brown. With every step, your boot sinks slightly, creating a soft hush instead of a strike. The scent here is intoxicating. It is the smell of ancient, undisturbed earth, of sweet decay, and the metallic cold tang of wet bark. It is a heavy, brown smell that feels as though it belongs to another century entirely. The trunks of the trees rise up around you like smooth silver pillars. You run your palm along the bark of a nearby beech. Unlike the rough, corky texture of an oak or the deep ridges of an elm, The beach is skin smooth and cool to the touch. It feels almost like frozen muscle. Under the rain, the silver bark has turned a dark, bruised slate grey, and you can see the water runs. Tiny vertical rivers of rainwater that channel down the trunk from the high branches, feeding the moss that clings to the roots. The moss is a world of its own. It is a vivid, electric emerald against the grey bark. If you lean in close, you can see the individual spears of the moss, each one holding a single trembling bead of water. The sound in the woods is hollower now, more intimate. Your breathing sounds louder here. The wind that whistled through the dry stone walls is gone, blocked by the density of the timber, leaving only the drip, drip, drip of the trees and the distant overhead roar of the storm in the leaves. You find a fallen log, silvered by age, and sit for a moment. And you feel the dampness of the wood through your thick trousers, but the heat of your body remains trapped beneath the felted wool. You are an observer in a slow-motion world. You watch a single droplet travel the length of a beech twig, hanging precariously for a long, shimmering second before gravity finally claims it. In this wood, time doesn't move in minutes. It moves in the rhythm of the rain and the slow, silent growth of the moss. You are perfectly still, perfectly hidden, and perfectly at rest. As you emerge from the sheltering eaves of the beechwood, the world opens up once more, though the mist has thickened, clinging to the brow of the hill like a damp fleece. Here the path joins a legendary artery of the landscape, the Fosse Way. This was a Roman frontier, a road built with such unwavering straightness that it seems to ignore the natural undulations of the Cotswold terrain, slicing through the earth toward the horizon. Under your boots, the texture changes again. Below the thin layer of modern mud and grass, you can feel the solid, unyielding foundation of the Roman engineers. This isn't just a track. It is a multi-layered monument. If you were to dig down, you would find the statumen, the base layer of heavy stones, topped by the rudis, a layer of broken stones mixed with lime. Even now, 2,000 years later, The road retains its camber, sloping gently from the centre to the sides to shed the rain into the ancient ditches. The sound here is solitary. Without the clatter of the beech leaves, the rain returns to a soft, persistent hiss as it meets the short-cropped grass and the stone. But there is a new sound, the clink, thud of your boots striking the larger limestone slabs that occasionally poke through the soil. It is a metallic, resonant sound that echoes in the quiet air. You are walking on a road that has felt the iron-shod sandals of legions, the heavy wheels of wool wagons, and the rhythmic plod of pack horses. You find yourself shortening your stride, matching the ghost rhythms of the travellers who came before you. To the sides of the road, the open field system of the medieval farmers becomes visible through the shifting fog. These are the ridge and furrow fields, because the heavy wooden ploughs of the era could not easily be lifted. The teams of oxen had to turn in long, graceful curves at the end of each strip, creating a permanent, wave-like pattern in the earth. You see these long, grassy swells rising and falling like the surface of a green sea. The troughs, the furrows, are filled with standing water, reflecting the leaden sky in long shimmering ribbons. The scent on this stretch of the Foss Way is heavy with the aroma of wet earth and iron. The limestone has a mineral, flinty smell when struck, and the water sitting in the ancient furrows smells of cold clay and dormant roots. Occasionally, a gust of wind carries the faint, sweet scent of wood smoke from a hidden farmstead down in the combes or valleys. But here on the high road, you are isolated. You feel the damp cold beginning to creep toward your face, the only part of you exposed to the elements. Your cheeks feel tight and chilled, but the rest of your body is a furnace of slow, moving heat inside your felted wool. You pull the leather toggles of your cloak tighter, feeling the rough texture of the cord against your numbing fingers. The Foss Way is a place of transit, a place of constant movement, and yet in the mist. It feels like a place where time has stopped to catch its breath. You continue forward, the straight line of the road acting as a guide through the white uncertainty of the wold. The straight line of the Foss Way eventually brings you to a small, crouched structure huddled against the lee side of a limestone ridge. This is Shepherd's Cot, a rudimentary shelter built for the men who guard the Cotswold lions, the great long wool sheep that are the true masters of this high country. The cot is a low, windowless building, made of the same unhewed stone as the walls you have followed for miles. Its roof is thatched with thick, sodden straw that has turned a dark, weathered chocolate brown under the rain. As you approach, the wind shifts and you are hit by a wall of sensory information. The scent is overwhelming. It is the thick, oily and primal smell of 1,000 fleeces. It is the aroma of lanolin, heavy and sweet, mixed with the sharp, acidic tang of damp manure and the cooling scent of wet grass. To a wayfarer, this is the smell of the Cotswold economy, the white gold that built the towering churches and fine houses of the valley. Sheltering in the leas or pasture behind the cot, the sheep themselves come into view through the shifting lace of the mist. These are not the small, skittish animals of the modern era. The Cotswold lion is a massive, noble creature, with a heavy Roman nose and a spectacular forelock of wool that hangs over its eyes like a golden mane. Their fleeces are not smooth. They are composed of long, tight ringlets of wool that hang down in heavy, oily ropes. You listen to the sound of the flock in the rain. It is a soft, wet chorus. You hear the clack of their hooves on the limestone outcrops, a sound like marbles being dropped on a stone floor. Then there is the tearing sound, the rhythmic mechanical rip of hundreds of mouths pulling at the tough fescue grass. Because the wool is so thick and oily, the rain does not soak them. It sits on the surface of their curls in millions of tiny shimmering diamonds. When a large ram shakes himself, the sound is like a heavy rug being beaten, a wet, flapping thud, thud, thud that sends a fine spray of mist into the air. You pause by the low door of the cot. The shepherd is nowhere to be seen, likely out checking the folds further along the ridge. But the heat emanating from the doorway is palpable. It is a low-energy, organic warmth, the collective body heat of an animal kingdom. You lean your back against the rough stone wall of the shelter, grateful for the break in the wind. You reach down and pick up a lock of wool that has snagged on a bramble near the wall. It feels incredibly heavy for its size, slick with grease and surprisingly warm. As you rub it between your thumb and forefinger, the yellow lanolin coats your skin, a natural balm against the chapping wind. The sound of the rain on the thatched roof above you is different here. It is a soft, muffled hiss as the straw absorbs the impact, a stark contrast to the clatter of the beech woods. For a few minutes you simply breathe, your heart rate slowing to match the steady, ancient rhythm of the grazing flock. The fossway eventually brings you to a high, desolate intersection known as the Cross Hands. Here, the Roman road meets an ancient saltway, their meeting point marked by a weathered limestone pedestal that has watched travellers pass for centuries. As you stand at this crossroads, the geography of the High Wold finally begins to yield its secrets. The mist, which has been a heavy, claustrophobic curtain for miles, begins to thin and fray at the edges, torn apart by the rising strength of the Stowe wind. Through a sudden, jagged tear in the white fog, you catch your first glimpse of your destination. Far across the undulating swells of the hills, perched on the highest crest of the horizon, is the square, golden stone tower of St. Edward's Church. Even from this distance, it dominates the landscape, a sturdy, defiant sentinel of Cotswold stone. In the shifting light, the tower seems to glow with a pale, ethereal light, standing out against the bruised purple of the retreating storm clouds. It looks less like a building and more like a natural extension of the hill itself. The sound at the Cross Hands is haunting, because it sits at a convergence of two valleys. The wind is funneled upward, creating a constant low-pitched moan as it passes over the edges of the stone pedestal. It is a lonely musical sound, like the vibration of a giant unseen cello string. You hear the flap, snap of your heavy wool cloak as the wind catches the hem, the dense fabric resisting the air with a deep, muffled sound. Beneath this there is the delicate rustle tinkle of dried seed heads of yellow rattle and knapweed shaking in the roadside verges. The sound of the landscape's brittle winter bones. The scent here is different. It has lost the heavy, oily musk of the sheepcot and the damp rot of the woods. It is a high smell, sharp, cold, and incredibly clean. It carries the faint metallic tang of the limestone plateau mixed with the bracing scent of distant pine forests. It is an air that clears the head and quickens the pulse. You find yourself standing taller, your lungs expanding to take in the vastness of the High Wold. You begin the final stretch of the approach, The road here is lined with stunted hawthorns, their branches bent permanently to the east by the prevailing winds. They look like grey, skeletal hands reaching toward the town. You notice the detail of the berries, the haws, which are a deep blood red against the slate-grey sky. They are wrinkled and cold, holding tiny droplets of rain like frozen tears. The ground underfoot is firmer now, the limestone more prominent, and your boots make a rhythmic, hollow clack, clack that signals your transition from the wild path to the outskirts of civilization. The church tower vanishes and reappears as the mist pulses, a north star made of stone, guiding you toward the warmth and the wood smoke of the high town. The final ascent into Stow-on-the-Wold is a steep, lung-burning climb that brings you onto the vast, wind-swept plateau of the town square. As you crest the hill, the roar of the Stow wind becomes a constant rushing presence, a sound like a distant ocean that never quite recedes. The town greets you with the smell of home, the thick, sweet scent of oak wood smoke curling from the stone chimneys, and the savoury roasted aroma of onions and salt pork wafting from the open door of a nearby inn. You turn away from the bustling square, seeking the sanctuary of the churchyard. You pass through a narrow stone lich gate, and suddenly the wind is cut in half. The churchyard of St. Edward's is a pocket of unnatural stillness. Here the gravestones, thick slabs of limestone encrusted with orange and silver lichen, lean at weary angles, as if they too are resting after a long journey. The ground is a soft, sodden velvet of deep green moss and short grass, which muffles the clack of your boots into a gentle, rhythmic thump. You walk toward the north door of the church, and here you find the most famous sight in the High Wold. Two ancient yew trees flank the arched stone doorway, their massive gnarled trunks growing so close to the masonry that they seem to be holding the church up. The bark of the yew is a deep, dark mahogany, peeling back in long, papery strips to reveal a hidden, fleshy red beneath. You reach out and touch the wood. It is incredibly dense and cold, its texture a chaotic map of twists and knots that have taken 1,000 years to form. The sound here is the drip, drip of rainwater falling from the needle-like leaves of the yew onto the flagstones below. It is a slow, steady clock, that marks the passing of centuries. You push open the heavy oak door, the iron hinges letting out a long, low-frequency groan, and you step into the interior. The air inside is still, cool, and smells of beeswax and cold stone. The transition from the wet, wild wold to this silent stone vault is like stepping into a dream. You find a quiet corner in the rear pew, near a stack of dry hassocks. You sit, and for the first time in hours, you feel the true weight of your limbs. The warmth of your body, trapped by the wool, begins to radiate outward, meeting the cool air of the church. You listen to the distant, muffled howl of the wind outside the thick stone walls. It sounds like a memory. Your eyes trace the soaring lines of the limestone pillars rising up into the darkness of the timber roof. The pat-pat of the rain on the high lead roof is a faint metallic whisper. You pull your cloak tighter, resting your head back against the ancient wood. The journey is over. The road, the woods, the sheep, and the wind have all led you to this moment of absolute, undisturbed quiet. As you close your eyes, the world of the High Wold fades into a soft, grey blur, leaving only the rhythm of your own breath and the deep, silent peace of the stone. Good night, Wayfarer.